Today marks a record for Bitcoin since we hit all-time highs at $124,000 last year. We've had 9 consecutive days of ETF inflows. Is that the mark of a reversal for the market right now? I'm going to talk about the ETF inflows. I'm going to talk about 4 other major things that are happening in the market right now that are time sensitive, that's going to impact your crypto portfolio, plus some really key levels that I'm looking at to help me understand whether or not now is the right time to buy or whether we should wait. The first thing, as I mentioned, is Bitcoin ETF inflows have now seen 9 consecutive days, over $2 billion. The longest streak since October 2025 when Bitcoin hit the all-time high is a huge moment for Bitcoin in this market cycle. One of the key levels that, if you've been following the channel for a little while, that we look at is the 200-week moving average. And this has been a level that has consistently been a bottom signal for the rest of the market. Now we're starting to really push off those levels, and we're up around that $75,000 range. The 200-week moving average as well is moving up. The 50-week and the 100-week are starting to push down as well. The other thing that I like to look at is on an on-chain level is the MVRV ratio. This is a really good indicator that I always utilize to help me understand where the market bottom might be in. And right now, the fair value, if we look over the last, if we bring this up and look over the last, couple of years, the MVRV ratio always between this sort of fair value range has always been a bottom signal for when Bitcoin has really rallied. Now that market value to realized value ratio shows us the short-term and long-term holders of Bitcoin and the value that they're holding their Bitcoin price range at. And right now, we've potentially started to move off the lows here, all right? We really want to see and make sure that we push higher than this fair value of 1, but we started to touch on it. We didn't quite hit it. One of the things that we've been thinking about in terms of our portfolio strategy at Collective Shift is really about thinking about where are we in terms of the next few weeks of projection, and have we started to see the market push more positively. One thing that I have started to see literally over the last couple of weeks, but especially over the last 48 hours, is we're started to see more accumulations coming from these institutions with these ETF inflows. And that original plan was to continue to dollar cost average in and below that 200-week moving average, but the updated plan now is to really start to think about accumulating at these ranges again above that $70,000 level because of the risk to reward that potentially that bottom may be in. Now, the other thing that we're looking at, not only on the side of the Bitcoin ETF inflows, is that once again we're seeing huge buys from Michael Saylor. Strategy just bought another 3,500 Bitcoin getting closer to his 1 million Bitcoin target range. His DCAs have continued to build and his reserves are quite staggering, continuing to mop up the supply. As we know, there's only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be created. Already 20 million of those have been mined, and Strategy has bought a lot of them. Number 2 here is the Strategy piece, but number 3 is the US Strategic Reserve. This is the big announcement that we saw yesterday at the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas. The White House advisor Patrick Witt teases this big announcement, right? And at this announcement, he basically went in and talks about that once the Clarity Act is approved, we will see a huge step forward and basically crypto will take off like a rocket ship. So what does that even mean? Well, this big Bitcoin reserve announcement is a few different things. One thing is that if this gets passed, the Clarity Act, right? The Clarity Act is essentially this act that Trump has been pushing for a long time. The deadline is now May. We're going to know before May whether or not we are going to see this Clarity Act be approved. Sorry, by the way, I'm in my hotel in New York at the moment, so I've got my DIY set up. But if we see this Clarity Act approved, and by the way, it's a 72% likelihood right now, this is going to allow so many things to happen for crypto. Number 1, we're going to see the likes of Solana, ADA, XRP have their light move forward in potentially being able to them have their own ETFs and also be marked as a commodity, all right? So banks, institutions will be more comfortable buying these altcoins. It'll be a huge thing for altcoins. For DeFi, the developers are actually going to be allowed to be utilizing and building crypto that's onto the side that isn't going to be overly regulated and having these more and more impacts from the SEC and things that we've seen in the past. We're going to allow more and more tech adoption for crypto as well. The other thing as well is the Bitcoin Reserve. They already own approximately, I think it's about, $25 billion worth of Bitcoin, right? The US government, they own a lot. Potentially what this is going to also push is more adoption of Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. Not only will they not sell their Bitcoin, but they may start to look at accumulating Bitcoin. And if this happens, even more sovereign wealth funds, other countries are going to follow suit. Everyone tends to follow the US, and that is a big takeaway, all right? If that happens, we're going to see massive global sovereign adoption narratives and going to be a huge push for crypto if that bill gets passed, all right? So that's the third one. That date is coming in May, so a big eye on that. And you can see more about this strategic Bitcoin reserve and the stockpile over on the website, the American Presidency Project. The other big thing, Western Union has announced a USDPT stablecoin on Solana. So essentially what has happened here is that Western Union, they are one of the biggest institutions in the world for sending money cross-border, probably the biggest, 175 years old. They are one of the biggest giants. They have selected Solana to be their settlement global transaction layer for their own stablecoin. They have explicitly framed this as that this will be a Swift alternative. This is making a huge shift, guys. This is the big unlock for blockchain. Right now, if you want to send money over a weekend, if I want to send money back to Australia, it has to be over the weekend. again, it's going to take 2 or 3 days to close. The banks are closed. I'm going to get hit with currency fees. It's just a nightmare. Stable coins, I can pay anyone instantly anywhere in the world. Right now, some of my team that are based in different parts of the world, I can pay in USDT in stable coins. They get instantly with no fees, and it's super easy to use. Albeit the accounting systems, that part is not really, locked in at the moment. But as a business owner, for me to be able to spend stable coins and accept stable coins from customers and send it out, it's super easy to send out money internationally. Now, Western Union are jumping on board. This is a huge part. The big insight here, folks, for XRP holders, that is XRP is trying to be the settlements layer for the SWIFT network and replace the SWIFT network. The question now is XRP actually going to overtake Western Union as someone that's been doing this for 175 years, launching on Solana? And this is something that, is a reason why I own Solana in my portfolio, down obviously in this market correction. But one of the biggest parts that I'm, most excited about Solana, and by the way, this is our research platform. If you're interested in getting our research and our support and education and guidance, we coach, our members through. We do one-on-one insights. You get access to all of our research and tools and platforms to help you save time and build your portfolio. I'll put a link in the description below. You can go and check that out. Yeah, the Solana blockchain, one of its biggest bullish, advantages is it's fast moving, the user experience, it's got a strong developer community, and its major catalyst is it actually has some really big players on its board in the presidential and White House sort of ecosystem. And Solana has always been known as that sort of first blockchain to be really a lot faster and quicker than something like Ethereum. And for Western Union to go and back Solana as their USD stablecoin, as their preferred digital blockchain network is a huge thing. And Solana really speaks about itself as a high performance blockchain, all right? And that adoption is only going to continue, and more transactions happening on Solana. So very bullish for Solana, a big watch for there. The last one that I wanted to mention was just around the strategic reserve, which I mentioned, all right? The strategic reserve is the part of the Clarity Act that is going to be approved based on this getting through the Senate in May. And that's US strategic reserve, like I mentioned just before. This is a big part of the actual accumulation of Bitcoin from countries and other sovereign wealth funds, all right? This is the screen I had here before. A huge part of what crypto and Bitcoin, what Bitcoin specifically is trying to be, is a sovereign asset. It's trying to be a hedge against the craziness that happens in the world with the rising debt, the rising inflation. US government is in $38 trillion worth of debt. If this gets passed through the strategic reserve, not only for Bitcoin, for the government, but more and more entities, more companies, over 100 publicly listed companies here in the US own Bitcoin in their balance sheets. That's a huge part. Individuals will start to do this more. Already we're seeing IRAs, we're seeing SMSFs, we're seeing, retirement money flow into Bitcoin because people are realizing that the cash in their bank is not going to get them to where they need to get to, all right? So we're starting to see this fear and greed index starting to move a little bit higher. We're starting to see a little bit more positivity in the market. We're still seeing some resistance ultimately in the market, all right? And if I, show you what this looks like, basically what we see based on, these charts of not only the MVRV ratio, but if we go back to something like the 200-week moving average, there is resistance in the market, all right? There's always resistance. People have buy and sell levels, all right? And this is a widely misunderstood thing in crypto, is that people forget what, market resistance is, all right? So if you have a chart, let's say, actually let's go back and let's say the chart is coming up right here. And why we start to see sell pressure and why we start to see, market sell off is that during these levels here, all right, at certain levels, right now there's a big one between 80K and 100K, is there's a lot of sell pressure, all right? This is resistance levels. Between these levels, there's basically a lot of buyers that are wanting to take profits and get out of their position. So as Bitcoin continues to hit these ranges, we start to see, Bitcoin bouncing off these resistance levels. What we need is a big push higher through these resistance levels, which brings in new buyers, and that ultimately pushes these resistance levels higher. That is why right now we're starting, or have seen for a little while, this sort of accumulation choppiness period for Bitcoin and altcoins that are sitting in these ranges. We've been talking about this a lot in our group. People talking about where are these accumulation ranges and when is the right time to buy Bitcoin. Well, for me, again, I speak about this a lot, but from a weekly moving average perspective, anywhere around this 200-week moving average and also below the 100-week is historically a really good time to accumulate, all right? This only has happened for a few months over the past 8 to 10 years of Bitcoin. The Bitcoin price only stayed below this, 100-week moving average for about 6 to 12 months. Arguably with a sharper sell-off range, we may only be in this range for a less period of time, but accumulating during these ranges here is a really good time. In markets, in crypto, accumulation ranges tend to happen for 6 to 18 months. I believe, based on these news here, if we get the Clarity Act approved in May, we start to see Bitcoin coming out of that accumulation range. If it doesn't get approved, I expect us to roll over and head back towards that 200-week moving average range. But if you're trying to build a long-term Bitcoin stack, I think now is a really good time. Altcoins, again, I'm waiting to see how that plays out on the Clarity Act. I'm waiting to see if we start to see, some of these alts come off their lows, because even with the positive news we've seen with Solana, we haven't seen really a lot of price movement just yet. So So yet to be seen on the coin side. I wouldn't be accumulating too heavy into those alts right now unless you've got a high risk appetite. But there is some really, really good positive news that's happening in crypto. Finally, we're starting to see some movements, and all eyes are on that Clarity Act coming up in the next few weeks. So if you like this video, check out some of the other videos on the channel. We've got a lot of other things to talk about portfolio and strategy, but I wanted to talk about these big 5 news items right now. Check out the link in the description below if you want to check out how we work with our members, and I'll see you on the next video.